Hey guys, so my original question was, does a culture or subgroup's Argot isolate them from their regular society? Which, after researching, it turns out that though may not be the intent, is in effect what it does. And depending on the subgroup, there are instances in which Argot is intentionally created to set that group apart from their their popular society. So the definition of Argot is words or jargon which are created by a group and used among themselves specifically. Those words, known only to them at the time, unify them as a group, which in effect do isolate them from the rest of their society. So I made a presentation to go over that and give some more definitions on and some examples and origins of Argot. Argot, can't, jargon, language, secret language are all sort of going to be used interchangeably, but mostly with explanation. Secret languages. Argot is derived from the name given to a group of thieves and spies in 17th century France. They were called Les Argotiers. I apologize for that pronunciation. But that's where the word Argot came from. Argot is a specialized vocabulary that identifies a subgroup and creates defined boundaries of the group, defined by their language. Because it is derived from the spies and thieves, it's also referred to as a secret language because to outsiders, it is completely impossible to translate, depending on the group. In the strictest of definitions, Argot is a specialized vocabulary that identifies a subgroup and creates defined boundaries of the group through language. The inclusive nature of the secret language is a characteristic of group identity. This commonality of speaking the same language that that group created can encourage a sense of unity. Argot also refers to the unique terminology which a group has altered or created a new meaning for. An example of a group's manipulation of words and meanings is the ever changing jargon for money, sometimes called dough, cheddar, which is extremely outdated. I apologize, Skrilla, bills, Benjis, etc. So, in summary, a subgroup doesn't necessarily have to create an entire language for them to have their own argot, but they may just have a few altered words mixed in with their lingo that an outsider wouldn't easily be able to figure out the meaning for. A subgroup that uses an argot can be something a social group, so a gang, a crew, a group of teenagers, or something professional. Medical professionals, radio operators. A good example is people working in the food industry. There's some words that are used there that until I personally worked in a kitchen or as a waitress, I wouldn't understand. So saying something is 86th means that there's no more of it. Saying that you need something on the fly means to skip the tickets and cook the food immediately, things like that. And there's also unspoken argot or nonverbal argot, which is expressed nonverbally with clothing or gang colors to identify people within the same gang. Somebody wearing studs and patches and leather might be perceived to be a punk. Hairstyles like a pompadour, the big poofy hair, is usually just worn by rock people in the rockabilly scene, which is huge and booming in Japan right now. Another form would be handshakes or tattoos. Those are all nonverbal argos. If a group's argot is taken up and if a group's verbal argot is taken up and used in the general populace, it becomes considered slang. So slang is a word taken from a subgroup's secret language and is used in regular society. The origins of argot are attributed to the thieves' cant, also referred to as peddler's French. It was a secret language used by thieves, beggars, and peddlers in Great Britain in the 16th century. It was described as being a dialect whose sole intent was to deceive. So this really was a secret language. And among other purposes, this language was used to communicate openly in public while conveying their true meaning to their coworkers. So perhaps a pickpocket pointing out a mark to a fellow pickpocket would use their argot, terms that regular civilians just wouldn't understand and thusly wouldn't be alerted that they're about to be robbed. They may also use their argot or secret jargon to discuss their illegal activity while they're out eating or having a drink without fear of any others overhearing. Their private language created an intentional language barrier which kept others out while forming stronger working relationships with others within their criminally oriented groups. And this really specifically is in relation to thieves in early Great Britain. Samuel Ridd claims that the thieves' cant was created around 1530. He's quoted as saying it was to the end that their cozenings, knaveries, and villainies may not be so easily perceived and known. Ridd attributes the development of the thieves' cant to Cock the king of gypsies, but this is known to be a myth. Not long ago in America, if someone had a tattoo, it could be assumed that they were a sailor or a criminal, but we're just going to push that under for the moment. The tattoos, which were an unspoken argot, were used to identify feats the sailor had accomplished, like sailing across certain oceans, serving in a particular country, on ships that they worked, or wars that they fought in. They were, at the time, worn like badges of honor, and these tattoos silently conveyed a likeness with fellow sailors within their military culture. So they could communicate with each other by identifying the tattoos that they had. Certain things meant certain things. So having an island might have meant that you had been to Hawaii. A specific ship or a specific phrase might have meant that you served on a specific ship. It was actually very obvious, but just not very well known. Then in the 1960s, tattoos gained popularities with bikers, and along with their motorcycles, their black leather clothing, tattoos were a unifying symbol among biker culture. These were all examples of nonverbal. Similar to the sailors' culture, the Ibn of Borneo used tattoos to signify places they'd visited, battles they'd won, and in the past, heads they'd taken in battles. The tattoos on this man's shoulders are of an eggplant flower. He received those as he came of age from a boy to a man, and they represent the rope of life and the journey he is about to begin. The practice, the practice and importance of earning tattoos have fallen out of favor with the Ibn. An elder was quoted as saying, "When we lost our tattoos, we have lost our culture." And unfortunately, with the introduction of Western culture, many tribes' cultural heritage, like the Ibn, have been lost and adapted to the Western and newly introduced cultures. One very distinct example of argot is rhyming slang, which is also called Cockney slang, or just Cockney. It was originated in Victorian England, and to an outsider, it would sound like utter nonsense. But as I learned, that's the point. It's adapted from thieves' cant, and its intent is to be as unintelligible to outsiders as possible. So I'm going to try to explain how it works as well as I can, but bear with me. So the way it works is rhyming. What you do is you take a well known term or phrase, and in this example, we're going to use Adam and Eve. You rhyme the last word with another word. So Adam and Eve. Eve rhymes with believe. And so when we say Adam and Eve, that means it means believe. Which, if somebody's just talking and they were to say, I Adam and Eve you, nobody who wasn't aware of this lingo would know what that meant. Again, that's the point. So here's a couple more examples: apples and pears, baked bean. And to reiterate, what you do is you rhyme the last word. So rhyme pears with something, and that's what the slang means, and bean. So apples and pears means stairs, and baked bean means queen. Yep, that's a fun thing. So as you saw with those last two examples, it would be absolutely impossible to understand what two people or a group of people were saying if you heard them speaking and referring to the queen as baked beans. So that is an example of rhyming slang, which has its origin and roots in the thieves' cant and how it would make it difficult for an outsider to understand the thieves when they were communicating. So In summation, Argot is a lingo, series of words, or language created by a group to either make it easier for them to communicate amongst their group or to keep outsiders out and unable to understand their communications. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to answering questions.